Hello, everybody. Welcome to our new series, Nurturing Nature Schools. Today, we're going to be talking about the cob oven and why that matters to you in your setting, whether you are a founder of a nature school, whether you offer some other kind of nature-based programming, or whether you are a parent listening in today. I am your host, Meagan Duncan, foster mom, behavior coach, founder of Connected Kids Thrive, a positive behaviors guide for nature schools, because sometimes taking the walls away isn't quite enough. And today we have Amber Simons, founder of Unbound Earth School. And I am so excited and honored to get to talk to her today. You're going to love what she has to offer. But before I invite Amber to introduce herself, and before we dig in more, I want to let you know what's coming up in our conversation, because that is respectful, right? Letting you know what to expect is respect. And that is a positive behavior tip that we can give to kiddos, letting them know what's coming up for them so that they can ask questions or they can be a part of the conversation. So I want to offer you that same courtesy. And so our first thing that I want to let you know is Amber and I both have some goodies for you at the end. So stay tuned. The next thing is the first half of this podcast episode is going to be about case studies, questions around the cob oven build. And we're going to talk about this through the behavioral lens. So myths, barriers, mistaken beliefs that might revolve around the cob oven build. And then the second half of our conversation, we are going to be talking about the guest experts. That's the second half, is all around the guest expert and what they have to offer. And today that is Amber. She is an expert on the cob oven build, and she's got so many insights for us today, and I cannot wait for you to hear that. And so she's bringing the conversation insight from that lens. And so with that, Amber, please introduce yourself, and then we will dive in.
Awesome. Thanks, Megan. Thanks so much for having me. It's an honor and a blessing, and it's just been so great getting to know you and seeing how all these things connect. And so I'm Amber. I'm the founder of Unbound Earth School. Um, I'm the mom of Hadley. She's 8 years old now. Um, and I'll get more into my story in the second half when we go into all of that. But I do work with community, mixed age, fully outdoor program. And I, in particular, really love working with cob. And so Megan has spoken about the cob oven already, but just to give you a little bit of information, if you're not already familiar, cob is sand, clay, straw, and water mixed together to make a really strong building material in most cases. And I really like building ovens out of that mixture with community. And so we'll be diving in, like Megan said, to why and some of the case studies, and then some of the cool connections that I've made over the years along those lines.
Thank you. Amazing, because I know zero about cob oven things or cob anything. I Someone mentioned, as I was researching, I saw that, oh, it's not just ovens, it's all kinds of structures. And like you just said, it's a building material for strong structures. And
Mhm.
so
Right.
that's exciting. And I'm definitely thinking about how I can engage in a build for my with my kiddos' school, and also here on our property, because
Yes.
there is nothing more connecting than food, in my opinion. And
Mhm.
how cool to create the thing that makes the food for the community, whether that's family or a wider community. So
Exactly. Yes.
thank you for that great intro. And so now we do have some barriers, some concerns that people have submitted. And luckily, Amber also can come to us with some specific things that she's encountered in her journey, because this is not something that I have experience with, like I shared. However, I can still support the conversation from that behavioral lens. So, with
Yes.
that, we'll go to our first one. And that is from a um it's yeah, the perfectionistic barrier. And it says, my husband is a perfectionist and would rather build it himself versus let the children do it. And then yeah, what that's I think that can come up for anybody, whether it's a founder, as a team, or parent. So what do you think about that?
Right. So this case study is from my own community. And so it was really interesting. Like, first of all, obviously, taking the lens of understanding here, right? So, this particular person, they were really excited and really eager to do a build with their community. They have a nature program outdoors with children. But their barrier was that her husband, again, this was a perfectionist, and that she didn't think that it would work out because he'd rather build it than have the children do it so that it was perfect, I guess, which is really awesome when you think about cob ovens, because when you're working with this material, there's no perfect about it. There's math and there are ratios and there are things that make them work better and more optimal. But this is an ancient practice and it's been done for a long time. And one of the coolest things about this material is that you can knock it down and redo it. You can at any point. So it's really cool. Of course, you probably don't want to do that too many times, but that is one of the benefits. And so, if something does get messed up, if something falls down, most of the materials are just right from the soil on the land. So you could get more of them. You could remix them and reactivate them. You could take a part off and redo it. And so again, there is math and there are ratios that make this work more optimally, thinking along the lines of convection and things like that. Um, but it was just a really interesting perspective, and I almost said unfortunately, but I trust the process. But unfortunately, they haven't built an oven out there, and I think that's still something that they're having a hard time getting over the hump. But I do know that this particular person, she does want to come out and learn herself and learn these principles, and so I hope that she'll be able to attend an upcoming build. Because again, it's totally understandable that you would want a perfect outcome. But the fun of this is that there's a part for every age. No matter the skill level, no matter their ability, no matter their age, there's a part for them. And that's really the fun of it. And so yeah, it's not about perfection.
I
The way that it ends up is always perfect.
I love that. And as you and I started this conversation a few weeks ago, because I'd never even heard of it, of course,
Hmm.
I'm Googling it, and there are some beautiful, intricate ovens.
Right.
And it could feel like, oh man, I want mine to look like that.
Exactly.
And
Right.
it can, I think, going into it with the intention of connection.
Hmm.
That's the theme that, from the behavior perspective that we weave into everything is connection first. And so if we can keep
Hmm.
that at the forefront, maybe that can help that perfectionistic tendency release a little bit, because if the kids are having fun and there's smiles on everyone's faces, even
Hmm.
for some frustrations, maybe that's okay too.
Yeah.
But if connection is that leading theme, then the outcome is going to be perfect. And I love that you said it can come down and we can rework it again. So
Yep.
that's very cool. I wonder if, and maybe, maybe there's no such thing as too many cob ovens on a property. Like
I agree.
we'll do, we'll do this one and it's going to look like this, and we're going to learn some things, and then we'll do this
Yes,
one. Okay.
absolutely. And there's with our particular program, we've migrated a lot to different farms and properties and things like that. And some of the time we deconstruct the oven, we demo it, and that's a fun process. And then we rebuild it somewhere else to use those materials. That's just one of the layers that is really awesome about this whole concept.
That is cool. That's awesome. So hopefully that husband is listening and
Mhm. Yeah.
can release that perfectionistic tendencies to keep
Hmm.
connection at the forefront, and also it can be redone or we can do another one. So
Exactly.
awesome. Okay. And anyone listening, wherever you are, put questions in, and Amber and I will reach out to you and give you support. So I didn't mention that at the beginning, and I want to mention that now. So however you're
Mhm.
listening, definitely put questions in the comments or reach out to us individually. So the next one is, gosh, it looks amazing, but it looks so time consuming. So what do you think about that?
So that can be approached from so many angles too, right? So it looks awesome, but it seems so time consuming. And so the one of the awesome parts, and I said this to you yesterday, I'm like, I always say one of my favorite parts or one of the most awesome parts, and I say that about every part,
Yes.
but this particular component is, this can look like however it needs to for your community. if is in theory, you could take as long as you wanted to build it, or you could do it as fast as you wanted. And it's all going to depend on how many people you have to help, the outline of the itinerary, having materials on site, having everything prepared. And so you could definitely build one of these in a day if you wanted to. If you had about 15 people, it's 100% possible. You could do it over the course of a weekend. You could also take a whole season if you wanted to, if you wanted to do it in, if you wanted to slow down and take your time. That's another awesome part about this is that, as I get to know communities and hear their needs and their barriers or their specific wishes and their outcomes and the functionality, then, we can organize it to fit that need. And so, yeah, it is time consuming, especially if you try to do it by yourself. But that's another perk of these builds is that you could do it yourself. It's obviously going to be a lot harder. It's very labor intensive. It's a lot more time consuming. But traditionally, these ovens are built by a village and used by a village. And so that's something that I definitely encourage.
God, keeping that essence alive. Oh my gosh,
Hmm.
I love that. And as you know, you and I've been talking, and as we're moving through this process together right now, and after, as I think about doing this with my daughter's school, she goes to a Waldorf school, kindergarten through eighth grade, and so how can this, incorporate everybody, but also not take too long, but
Yeah.
also, like you said before, just indulging the process. So, and the thank goodness that you're available to help with that planning piece, because
Yes.
I mean, Google could, I suppose, give me some things, but having someone intimate that giving a plan is much better. So
Yeah.
I didn't realize a day to a season. That
Yeah.
is really
Whatever works for
cool.
you.
That is really cool. It'll be interesting if the school community would want parents involved, or if
Hmm.
it's just going to be, each age group contributing
Right.
their own components to the degree that they can. So very, very cool. Okay, the next one is mess. The mess. So I don't
Yeah.
know. What do you think about that?
Oh, I love messes. So, I in particular work outdoors with the community. I spend most of my time outdoors. I live on a farm. We're outdoors all the time. I know I'm inside right now, so I'm not trying to be a hypocrite, but the Wi-Fi is way better in here. Uh, but the mess is so important. It's such an important piece. And there's so many reasons I could go into, but the first one that I come up with is the sensory experience, which I'm sure you understand and can relate to. And so messes, uh, you're either totally fine with being muddy or you don't like being muddy, right? There's not really an in between. Um, and that's another great part of the oven build is because, like I said, there's a part for everybody. You don't have to get muddy. If you want to work with the cob, you're probably going to get a little dirty, but we have lots of ways that people can wash up. So we like to use hand pump 5-gallon jugs, hoses, kiddie pools. There's lots of ways that you can incorporate the water and washing up and then having a dry towel and all kinds of things. But number one, embracing the mess for sure. And just knowing that messes can be cleaned up. That's our motto in our family. Messes are fine. They just need to get cleaned up at some point. And as you know, and something that you even put in your benefits of cooking with kids, like, making or remembering that cleaning up is fun and it's an important job, but it's also can be fun. Um, and so you can incorporate responsibility there. But I think the one that stands out the most is the sensory experience because I've seen so many, in particular, younger learners who may have some sort of aversion to being messy and they overcome it during a build. And also adults, their inner child comes out and they might not want to put their toes in the mud at first, but over time, I would say about 90% of people hop in and get in there and get muddy, even if they were uncomfortable at first. So it's truly amazing to see.
I I love that. Yes, I really appreciate that you brought up the sensory component and the sensory aversion from my early days as an early childhood interventionist, working with OTs and PTs. I got
Mm-hmm.
to work with a multidisciplinary team. So that was super cool getting to see, and my background's in speech therapy. So getting to
Hmm.
really see the child from a holistic perspective was so profound for me, but something that I learned from them and that you kind of hit on is having cleaning,
Mm,
having cleaning materials available. So
yeah.
and letting kids wash their hands every 3 seconds if they need to, and just
Yeah.
releasing the pressure, but letting them know, hey, it's like you said, the 5 gallon bucket thing, there's water
Hmm.
available, and it really builds their stamina, their courage to
Yes.
prolong those instances of being messy and engaging in the mess. So, um,
100%.
and
Yes.
having that there too for so the adults can wash up every
Yeah.
3 seconds if they need to, if they haven't had
Yes.
that opportunity. So, um,
Yep.
really, really important. I love that. And embrace the mess because it is messy. And I think you can it's evidence of awesomeness. That's something that I say a lot, whether the kitchen's messy or the kids are doing crazy
Hmm.
things. It's like, okay, this is the evidence of the awesomeness that we
Yes.
are creating together. And
It's
so,
so true.
and that can again come back to connection, letting that be our theme weaving through,
Hmm.
not making it about the mess, but about the joy within the mess. And so hopefully that can
Yes.
help people relax a little. Very, very
Totally. Love
cool.
it.
Okay, the next one is Um, would you say there's any risk component to a cob build?
Definitely. I think there's lots of healthy risk. And there could even be hazards, but those are things that we can work with your community to help mitigate for sure. And when I think of hazards, I think of things like it's ideal to have a roof over your cob oven to have something to cover it. So like when I'm thinking about carpentry and construction, with working with tools, that's where some hazards could
Mm,
come in. So you want to be mindful of that. Um, but there's tons of risk. You're again, messes can be risky. You're working with sand, sand can get in eyeballs and it's uncomfortable. You have kids who want to jump on sand and clay piles, so there's risky play involved there. So, climbing the piles and jumping off or whatever it might be. And then also working with these materials, they're very heavy.
mm.
So that could be a little bit risky. But also it can be, it's a healthy risk. So having different size buckets is always important to me, from really small up to like 5 gallons, so that whether it's a younger learner or somebody who just doesn't want to carry heavy things or doesn't have that capability, they could still be involved, and take the risk that's comfortable for them. Um, and then when you get to the component where the oven is built and you've dug out the sand mold and you're ready to fire it up, you're working with the risk of fire. But again, to me and our program, it's a very healthy risk. We go through each step really mindfully, slowly. We incorporate storytelling, and give everybody an opportunity to connect with the fire piece. And so that it's a risk, yes, but it's a healthy risk and not a hazard, like I said.
I really appreciate that. Giving everybody, or offering different size buckets so people can contribute to the degree that they feel
Mhm.
comfortable so that
Yeah.
they don't feel like they need to tap out or come up with what fishing behaviors to defend their dignity. And so
Right.
I think that's super important. And what that is from the behavior realm is a front loading tactic.
Hmm.
Is not only providing those materials up front, but I guess from a front loading perspective is, do you also like sit the adults down and the kids down and kind of give some expectations or some heads up on things before you engage as another front loading tactic or strategy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with the oven build, there's several different layers, so literally physical layers of the oven. And so we kind of break that into sections and have a break in between. And so we like to have a good blend of like education and talking about things and getting, do like a quick example, and then getting into the heavy work and actually completing that layer. So it's just another great reason to do the cob build, because it's so organic, and you can break it down. And again, this is thinking more of like a 1 or 2 day workshop model. But then if it was drawn out over more time, you would have even more space to like discuss things and practice and fail and redo and, take this mixture of cob and try it over here on a rock or a tree, things like that. So yeah, there's definitely some organic spacing there for it to be uh, experimented with and explained and
Yeah,
all of that.
I love that. And what would you say is the biggest, since we're on talking about risk, what would you say if there's a theme that has come up for you that the adult in the room, in quotes, right? Because there's no room, but the adult
Yeah.
in the setting is what are their concerns mostly, whether it's another founder or staff members or parents or even the kiddos? Like what are some themes that you've come across that their concerns are?
Yeah. So I haven't experienced too many concerns of like the actual task or the materials. But something that I have experienced is going back to that perfectionism. And
Mm,
so this always becomes a great opportunity, but most of the time the caregivers, they really want the child to do it right.
mhm,
And even I've done builds that actually my daughter's been to all the builds, so there's at least one child, but there's been a few builds where it's mostly adults. And even on themselves, they really want to do it right. And they have this vision of what a cob oven might look like, but they don't necessarily know the different layers. And so layer one, you're not never going to see. Layer two, you're not going to see at all once it's covered. Layer three, you're not going to see. And then you have the outer layer of the aesthetic sculptural, right? So a lot of times, layer one, whether it's caregivers or just older participants, they really want it to be perfect and smooth and beautiful. And it's just interesting to see the way that our inner control freak kind of comes out. But it's just an opportunity for me to take a deep breath, step back and say, all right, I'm going to demo this step again. This does not have to be beautiful. We really want this part to be rigid, yada, 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 and just demo again and not calling anybody out and
uh-huh.
just creating an opportunity to, reel it back in. So I would say the perfectionism thing is probably the top one.
Interesting. I can definitely see that. And then
Yeah.
teaching adults is
Yeah.
very similar to teaching kiddos, not calling them out in
Yeah.
front of everybody, but just finding an opportunity to model how we're hoping for it to be done. If the instructions weren't clear to begin with, or,
Right.
and then even instructions, they're very, um, out there versus the hands-on. They're
Yeah.
different, the theory versus the actual. So, all right, I love
Exactly.
it. Um, okay, another question, and I think this might be our last one because we want to save time for the expert piece. This went fast.
Awesome. I
Um,
know.
okay. What if a parent questions the academic value of this?
A great question. It definitely happens. And maybe not just particularly with the cob oven, but just in general with outdoor learning, with self-directed learning, all these things. It's really, that's one of my favorite parts of homeschooling personally is taking life skills and taking interest of my daughter and translating that into academic record keeping, which is something we're responsible for in our state. And so we'll definitely talk a lot more about this in the part two for sure about the educational components and how deep it can go. And it's really endless. But those are opportunities where I just, as we're doing the build, just kind of mention. And so did you notice that they had a big piece of cob and then they realized that, that didn't fit right there. So they got a smaller piece or they put some back and how that's it's so many skills, right? It's fine motor. So you're developing the basic skills of reading and writing. It's also math because it's volume and you're trying to fit something somewhere. And so things like that. So every time that we're working on whatever it might be, and there's an opportunity and there's some organic space and it comes through, I'll just mention it, and then it fosters a conversation for the caregiver to speak back and say, oh, well, what about this? Or I noticed this, or I noticed that. Um, because with everything that we're doing, especially when we're outdoors, there's just so many subjects that can fall under any of those types of things. And so I in particular like to talk about when um So when you're working with cob, there's mud, right? So there's dirt and water involved. And so with water, there's most likely going to be some splashing. It's just a natural side effect, which is awesome. And so when splashing starts happening, I like to talk about that with the caregivers of how that's physics, just because physics is so cool and it can be advanced. And I'm like, did you know that them practicing their splashing is so much math? And so it's just really cool to think about because I like to do that with my own family, with my own daughter, but to help other caregivers see that. And so maybe they can take a little pressure off themselves.
Yeah.
Like they're always naturally learning. And here's how this is history. Here's how this is language
Yes.
arts and so on.
I um I love that. And I can't wait to dig into the more the academic piece in our second half. And what's
Mhm.
coming up for me is, and from the behavioral standpoint and early intervention and speech therapy, is really what I'm seeing is not only the cob oven, but other projects. It really addresses every domain of development. So cognitive, linguistic, self-help, social, emotional, all of
Yes.
them.
Yeah.
And so the motor piece.
Mhm.
And then we can get into the academic specifics of how the cob
Right.
oven supports that specifically also.
Exactly. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay. Well, I think this is half. And so now, everybody, we're going to transition over to our guest expert, and that is Amber. And I can't wait for her to just share, more about the cob oven in a more intimate level. And so with that, Amber, yeah, please take it away.
Awesome. Thanks so much. So, I really want to start by just talking a little bit more about my background and my
Okay.
story and kind of how I got here. And so, like I said earlier, my daughter's 8. And so, since I was pregnant with her, I always knew that education would be very different for her than it was for me. I had already been exposed to Montessori and was diving into that. And that was my first introduction to there's a possibility of alternative learning. Um, because I had no idea. My best friend actually was getting trained in Montessori, and that's how I found out even before I was pregnant. And so I started learning the philosophy, and I was just like, wow, I was really robbed of my education. And I was kind of bummed, and I was like, well, I guess, now I can just start learning whatever I want to do. And started doing that and then got pregnant. So then I knew that, oh, I have all these opportunities to really foster something that makes sense for her and our family. And so over time, it just evolved. I worked as an assistant in a Montessori school for a little while Hadley was really young. Um, and there were some great parts to that, but there were also some parts that got me back out of the door. And so they spent a lot more time inside, pretty much all the time inside. And that just didn't work for us. I wanted something that was more outdoors. And so I started looking a little bit around in just our area. And I eventually did find a really small nature preschool. It was very grassroots. It was in somebody's backyard. And we went and toured. And I was like, yeah, this is it. And I started diving more into different pedagogies and philosophies and forest school. And there was a free forest school chapter in our area and just started really diving in heavy. Um, and so Hadley got a little bit older and she started attending that nature preschool for a little bit. And it was just a few months in that the founder of that program asked if I would be interested in working there too. She knew my background and my passion. And so I started working there. And once again, found some really awesome pieces and found some pieces that didn't resonate.
Yeah.
And then created my own program finally, which was Unbound Earth School. And so we really started as not just preschool, we were fully mixed age up to 12 years old, but most of our learners were 7 and under at that time, even though we were accepting older kids. So it was still on the younger side, but still mixed age. And it was a drop off program, which was really great and worked out for a while. We eventually moved to a farm and we were still drop off. And that kind of kept going for a few years to eventually I realized that we really needed to drop the drop off component and become more of cooperative, like fully cooperative. Caregivers are involved. And so we did that. And as soon as I started making that shift, I started realizing and learning and experiencing how important community led learning is. I realized through all this different training and reading and experience how parenting is kind of a joke. And it's not, of course, parenting is really important, but how important community caregiving is, at least in our community, in our world, in our life. And so diving into that cooperative piece and surrendering what I thought the program needed to be in the past and letting it organically unfold led me to this whole concept of community-led learning. And so that's really what I want to talk about today, and how I feel the Cobb Oven is the cornerstone of community-led learning. And so our program was always self-directed, child-directed, emergent curriculum. We pull from lots of different uh, things, Waldorf, Reggio Emilia, Montessori, Forest School, all those things. And it was truly individualized to that day, that learner, that environment, who's there, all the things. Um, and so that is the backbone of Unbound, right? So it's always been about autonomy, self-governance, freedom, and learning. But it led to this whole community-led learning piece, how everybody has a role, everybody has a skill, everybody has a need. And what does that look like? And how can we achieve equity, which we've talked a lot about. And so I've seen it happen over and over, this whole equity piece. And to me, like I told you, Megan, equity to me is you've got this quiche, and you've got two people coming in. One person ate a quiche already for breakfast and one had nothing. They don't both need the same amount of quiche that morning. We
Mm.
need to be able, or we can give each person what they do need, but it doesn't have to look necessarily the same. So anyway, equity. And so zooming that out to a more community level. And then I also started building these cob ovens. I got mentored by my friend April in Charleston. She's an amazing architect and is really great with cob. And she helped train me on this because I reached out to her and I said, my community needs a cob oven. I just know that we need a cob oven. There's something about connection and food and dirt. And she's like, oh yeah, we're going to be building one. I started a nonprofit. Come down and I'll show you how to do it. And then since then, I've built, I think, 12 ovens now, just in a short period, almost 3 years. Um, and so now I can see all these dots connecting. So today, I really just want to talk about community-led learning, and again, how the Cobb oven is the cornerstone of that.
I love it. I love it. And I don't want to, yep, you keep going because I don't want to derail
Okay.
your thoughts.
Just jump in if you have questions
Okay.
though, and if you have insight, that loops everything back to your expertise. Um, And so what is community, right? Well, pretty much anything. So it can be your family, it can be your neighborhood, it can be your church, your farm, your school, your co-op, your online community. Um, it really is completely individualized to that place and that time, that environment. Um, and so, but the ones that I mentioned are ones that we're probably the most familiar with or connected to as a community. Um, School, co-op, church, farm, neighborhood, etc. Um, and so when you think about that group of people, or even like a therapeutic office, I think is another great community specifically for cop ovens. When you think about that, you're serving a community and you're also a member of that group. And so there's this reciprocity that can happen. Maybe it's not necessarily happening yet, but you're a member of the whole, and the whole exists and can help you too.
Mm.
And so how is the Cobb oven the cornerstone of this? Well, as you already noticed previously in the first half and all of our conversations before, I could find a million reasons. I don't think I can stop finding reasons. So I really tried to narrow it down to three that we can touch on today. So one is resilience,
Mm.
one is connection, which is obviously we've been talking about that thread already today too, and the other is education. And so those three are pieces that most communities, I would say, find important. And
Mhm.
so the first one, resilience. How does the cob oven foster resilience in your community? Well, again, infinite options. So I'm just going to list a few. One is food.
Mm.
So once
Well,
the oven is actually built, you're going to cook in it. That's the kind of the whole point of that. So um, food resilience is really important. There's a lot of food scarcity. There's a lot of food deserts in everywhere. And so the cob oven can be this cornerstone of building abundance and resilience, because you're going to think about food in an interesting way now, whether that's you connecting with your local pizza shops who might supply some dough or some toppings, or maybe you're connecting with your farmers, hopefully. Maybe you're connecting with the urban garden that's in your city. Again, endless options there. So food it equals resilience. Funding is another key component of resilience. So funding and the economic side of it. And so building an oven you can achieve in a lot of different ways. Sometimes people might find funding barriers, but the cool thing about the oven is that you can do it as a fundraiser to build it, one, and especially once the oven is built, that can be your fundraising mechanism. So the wood-fired earthen oven, you fire it up, and the first thing you cook is pizzas. And so you can technically cook anything in these things, right? But the easiest thing, the first thing you're going to do is cook pizzas. And so with pizzas, especially if you get more community involvement, like you're working with your pizza shops or you're working with people who are donating dough or their time or whatever it is, you have a pretty high return on a pizza. So the cost is pretty low and you can sell them for a reasonable amount. You're just going to have to figure out what works for your community, but there's a high profit margin there. And so you can create fundraising, whether you're doing it once a month, once a week, once a season, whatever that looks like for your community, then you're increasing your resilience there. Um, Sustainability is a key component to resilience too, in my opinion. Building an oven, generally you can do upcycled, reclaimed, and just natural from the soil, from the land. So you're sustainable there, and it's going to connect you to the land, which is awesome too.
Mhm.
Um, and then that kind of funnels into stewardship. And so stewarding the resources that you have, stewarding this cob oven and your community and allowing them to learn about it and utilize it, it all just kind of circles back together. And so again, that's just a few ways that resilience shines through the oven. And most of those I feel like most communities would like access to or would like to enhance.
Mhm.
Um, And so then the second one, connection, which this one is so evident. And I talked to you specifically because it's like you can already understand how much connection there is just by talking about it. And then when you get your hands on the project and then you're connecting with that community member that maybe you haven't met before, or maybe you're learning from a different angle, and you just see how innately connected we are in real time, it's just fascinating. But obviously, one of the key components here is team building. So
Mhm.
when you're working on a project like this that is, it's again, it's labor intensive, it's skill based, but it's also inclusive. You're going to have to work together with a group of people. So some people are going to have strengths physically. Some people are going to have strengths like cognitively and creatively. And so how does that look with either a community that's already established or a community of people that has just come together just for a build? It's this really cool thing to see. And there's no shortage of ideas when something like this happens. There's so much troubleshooting for things that I didn't even think were like I mean, they're not a problem, but like people will have so many amazing ideas of how to do something or to make it better or more efficient. And sometimes it gets on the other kind of extreme. It's like, well, part of the fun of this cob oven is that it's an ancient practice and we're using low tech tools and things like that. And I just really like that. But some people are like,
Yeah.
they'd rather use the concrete mixer or, whatever it is, or they want to create a tool that's good for this. And it's just amazing. And so you're connecting,
Very
right?
cool.
And then the other part of connection that's always awesome are the stories. So
Mm.
stories that every time that I've been a part of an oven build, there's just amazing stories, whether it's about dirt or building something or pizza or whatever. There's just amazing organic stories. And you know, that's a really important part of connecting, right? So when somebody shares their story, we can see ourselves in them and vice versa. And we have a safe space to share our own story.
I love that.
So you're connecting further and you're integrating things. Um, and then the last one is education. And this obviously has so many facets too. It's really hard to narrow this one down, which is awesome. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that says enough. I could just say that like there's too many to list. There's no reason not to do it.
There
Education.
we go.
And so like education, is important to community and any community, but you can kind of scale this to be what does your community want to learn more of and what's important to your community. That's going to vary. But first things first, all the core traditional subjects are covered in an oven build. Um, you're going into history. Quite often when I have newcomers, if I'm working with cob and somebody new comes up in whatever environment we're in, they're like, "What's that?" They're always like, "What are you doing? What are you making? What's that?" And I usually say it's cob, and I say, "Have you ever heard of cob?" And a lot of times they say no, most of the time. And then I ask them the question, have you ever heard of Adobe? And I get more yeses on that one. I still get a lot of no's, but Adobe is a little bit more familiar to most people that I encounter. And so if they haven't heard of Adobe, then I ask, have you heard of bricks? And I've never gotten a no for that one.
There we
And
go.
so when we get to that point, wherever we are, I say, well, Adobe was the first bricks that were made, and Adobe is made from cob. And so cob just translates to a rounded lump of mass in English. And so it's sand, clay, straw, and water is the mixture that you would make. And then you could put that in a brick form, dry it, and then you get an Adobe brick. Um, and so anyway, you're talking about history at that point, right? So you're going into ancient building practices, and you can go as far and deep and wide as you want with that. Math, there's so much math. You're doing so many ratios. In order to create cob, again, you're mixing sand and clay, straw and water, and there's a very particular ratio to get the right amount of stickiness, the right amount of aggregate, and the right amount of fiber that holds it all together, right? So it's you're just naturally doing math. And then when you're building the oven, like I said earlier, there are ratios. Like you could just freeform it too. You totally could. But if you're building something and you want the proper convection, there's a ratio. You're doing percentages and you're doing um, fractions and all of that. So you can go again as wide, deep, and far as you want with that. Um, with language arts, one is the storytelling we were talking about and the talking. Like as the workshop host, I'm constantly talking, and so just being exposed to words and new words and different people and different dialects and things like that. Um, and then again, we talked about the fine motor skills. We know those are the precursors to reading and writing, right? And so if a child and sensory wise, so if a learner has access to playing with this gloopy, sticky, sandy mix, they're going to be that is the skills, the foundational skills that they need to read and write. Whether you knew that or not, now you know, and it's amazing. So there you have language arts. And then science. Again, you're outside first of all, and you're surrounded by, lots of science experiments that are happening all the time. And then you're kind of creating your own science experiments. And then when you're working with the community, which involves all ages, hopefully, ideally, you're going to have this person who gets the ratio perfectly and they're ready to put the cob on the oven, on the sand mold. And then you have this learner over here who they really just want to play with the sand component, or they really want to play with just the straw. And they're making their own mixtures and ratios, and they're understanding, oh, well, if I don't put any clay, then it's not sticking together. And so you're learning about science, you're learning about geology, et cetera, et cetera. And so that kind of covers just the very basic gist of the core traditional subjects, if that's what you're after. Um, and then the next part of education that I wanted to touch on, which is in our community, pretty sought after, is the skill-based learning. And so, of course, you're already getting those core subjects too. You already have that. It's just how you look at it and how you describe it. But with the skill-based, there's so many skills that you're going to encompass with an oven build. You can encompass foundation building, carpentry with building a roof. You're obviously learning the skill of cob making. And so if you can make an oven, then you can probably build anything because the mixture can be translated to lots of different building projects. Um, again, working with different sand, clay, and soils, different mixes, getting skills there, working with hand tools, um, so many things. I mean, stacking concrete blocks and connecting with other people, like there's networking, like there's just so many life skills involved, even with just that little bit in the oven build. And then as the oven's dried and cured and you're using it, you have those fire skills. You have pizza dough making skills. You have pizza garden skills. You have permaculture that comes into play. Maybe you collect rainwater off the roof of your oven that, goes into a container that you water your basil with that you're putting on your pizza, right? So like these are life skills that everybody, of course, wants for their kids, right?
Yeah.
And for your community. Like when you think about the greater community, that goes back to resilience. It goes back to connection, just all the things connected. So lots of skills there. Um, and then that really just segues into the scaffolding, that educational scaffolding I was saying. So, we started with those core subjects and we got into skill base, and then you can see how this becomes a whole community effort. Like you're working with your farmers now, or you're creating urban gardens at your schools, and then you're creating a curriculum that for your community and so this is why ultimately to me, it becomes a completely scalable model, right? And so it's completely individualized to your community. Um, and so that's why I think it's the cornerstone of community-led learning.
I have so many notes here, and I think if connection is our theme, well,
Mhm.
it is our theme, but thinking of stories and um, when adults and children are working together in community to build this cob, now kids are developing these skills that they can then not only hear the stories that their parents and other people are, sharing while they're doing this build, but then these kiddos can go forth and teach others how to do it and really
Yes.
develop that significance, that self-trust that they can do big, important things. I think that's one of the
Yes.
biggest things missing from the traditional model of education
Mhm.
is how is this meaningful? How is this contributing to the goodness of humanity, of even
Yes.
their self? And so,
Right.
yep, I think the cob oven and gardening and all these things are so so important, and something that Amber and I've talked about previously before too is this idea of education with children, or at least more education with children and less to them, and making their learning meaningful. And sometimes yes, there's a time and place where it is more like, okay, you need to learn this thing and here's how to do it and do this. Like there's space for that, and we've got to make sure there's harmony with this community-led, child-driven, self-led learning too, for
Yeah.
sure. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
I This covers so many components, and I think our audience can sort of even begin to extrapolate how far this goes beyond these three, and then into the nine. You know what I mean? Like this is
Right.
exponential, and
It
so
is.
my daughter is learning about Egypt right now in her class, and so I'm thinking like, if we were to do this community build, I wonder what the Egyptian story and history of some sort of cob
Right.
thing is, and how that either can be pulled in or just associated with, right? Like,
Right.
this is how they did it. This is
Because every area of the world or part of the country has
yes,
their own version of cob essentially.
yes,
And so then it would be cool for them to compare that to what they're learning, or find the different things in the different parts of the world, and then figure out their area that they're in and what that was there, and or just create their own, like figure out, because you know it's sand, clay, straw, which is also sometimes I just say plant fiber because it doesn't have to be straw, by
mm,
the way. So you might
camphor,
not have access to straw, but you have some dried broom sedge on your land. You could use that, so some things are going to be better for this or that, but them being able to go out and find the materials that are right in front of them
100%.
too. Yeah, super cool.
I love it. And then I wonder too, I mean, our land here was heavily populated by Native Americans, the Ute tribe,
Mhm.
the Navajo tribe, the all kinds of tribes. And so
Yeah.
what were they doing in the form of whatever their cob angle
Yes,
was?
exactly.
And so it really, and then this idea of connection too, tying our children and us back to the land. The
Hmm.
more we are disconnected from the land, we're seeing the evidence and the unfortunate natural consequences that are coming from that. This
Yeah.
disconnection, this sense of lostness, and when we can
Yeah.
build something from the land and that gives back to the land. That's that
Yeah.
full circle of giving that we can all lean into. Very,
Yes.
very cool. I love the idea of how you shared pulling in the community as far as the farmers and get, the farmers markets and the CAS. I don't even know what CAS stands for, but the
Mhm.
local where you're part of a
Oh,
co-op, right? Do you know what that stands
CSA. Yeah, community supported
for? Oh,
agriculture. Yes.
CSA. Okay, that's what I meant to say. And so I've been meaning to join one here and I just haven't.
Hmm.
And so very, very, and then like you said, the funding can be raised initially and then after also to tie up any ends and then continue that on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so cool. Um, and I think tying back to when you said parenting is kind of a joke, and I think what that meant to me, and to correct me if I'm wrong, is parenting was meant to be done in community. We were not meant
Right.
to do it alone. That's the joke,
100%.
right?
Yes, exactly.
We were
There's
not meant to do
unfortunately our
it alone.
society has us convinced in a lot of cases that you can be a single or dual parent household and maybe one of you works, maybe both of you even works, and you're supposed to cover all the bases and do all the things and do all the dishes and get everybody everywhere. And it's just a joke.
It's a
You
joke.
know, it's and you have to laugh at it. Otherwise, it's very stressful because this is real for a lot of people, myself included. I've been through where I didn't have enough support, and that's part of my story, right? That's part of why I'm here. And the more that you immerse yourself into this whole, what is my place in the community? And how can my community support me? How can I support them? What is the equity? What is the reciprocity? And then you're like, okay, this really is, I can't imagine it not being that way. And so this is for those families and caregivers who feel that, you can be the person that starts the community-led learning initiative in your area. And the cob oven can be a cornerstone, and it can be the centerpiece for it launching and for it sustaining. And so that's where, I'd love to help too.
I I think that's a great segue into how can people reach out to you for this kind of support.
Yeah.
Well, just
Yeah. So the best way to connect really is just my email, unboundearthschool@gmail.com. And unboundearthschool.org is the website. And so if you email me, contact me there, it goes straight to me. So I'll be in touch with you. And you can learn a little bit more about me and us on our website, but just shoot an email and just see I'd love to see what you have to say and then get to know you and see, starting with step one is just getting to know you and hearing more about your community, and then going from there.
Yeah, yeah, and I think for any of our listeners who are interested in like, what does this look like for my community? Amber is your go-to person for that. She works with not only, I mean, with anybody probably interested in building a cob, but also
Yeah.
people who are interested in building a nature-based setting
Right.
for their community. So that's really um, my theme, my thread of how I support and encourage communities to that connection in communities is more programs coming up so that children are supported in more self driven ways. And again, that motto of more education with kiddos and less to them. So if that's something that you are interested in as our listener, Amber is available right there. And one more thing, since we're sticking here on this cob oven piece, Amber and I are thinking about how we can do a somehow in the near future a great cob oven build. And so if you're interested in that, reach out to her and let her know. And we will figure out how to do this on a global level. How fun would that be? Where people who are interested just do it in their own way with support and kind of doing it together and making it happen. So we'll keep
Yes.
you posted on that. Again, I'm gonna definitely build one here on my property, and then also I'm gonna see if my daughter's school would be
Yay.
interested, and that'll be so. So we will be in
It's
the
so great.
mud with you,
Yes.
in the mud.
Let's do it.
And then for me specifically, I work with established nature schools, programs that incorporate nature. They're already established, but they're just looking for that extra support with the behavior piece. So I come in and I just enhance what you're already doing and helping your teachers and guides think about behavior in a different way, looking at what they're doing to contribute to any kind of behavior, positive or negative. So that's how I help. And so you can reach out to me at connectedkidsthrive.com, and I am happy to support you and you, our listeners, here in that way. And so with that, oh, Amber has a goodie she's going to share, and then I'll share a goodie that I'm going to share because I said that twice.
Okay, awesome.
Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Okay, so if you guys go to my website and you go under courses, you'll find an intro to cob course. And I think Megan's going to link it in the description too, so it's easy to get to. And so this course, it's super quick, it's easy, it's free, and it just gives you a general overview of, again, like what cob is, the mix, a little bit of history, modern. It's a very quick recap of this episode in a lot of ways. And so yeah, definitely enjoy that and share it with your community and kind of see if you get any engagement and then let me know if I can help further.
Amazing. So generous. Thank you. And I think because this is my very first intro to cob, I would love to share my a different resource and what it is. It's the 20 plus positive behavior benefits of cooking in the kitchen with your kids. Because I have served parents in the past, and there is nothing more profound as far as I always say, cooking with our kiddos is the biggest bang for our parenting buck. And
Hmm.
so the cob oven fits right into that. But I would love to give you, because yeah, that handout and it's 20 benefits of cooking with your kids. So, so powerful. And I'll be working with Amber to pull those into the cob build so it can be articulated in a really great way for you there. But I think you'll love that handout too. Because yeah, cooking with the kids, there's so many benefits that we may not even know from all the domains of development, all the
Yep.
educational components. So I'm excited
Yep.
to share that.
It's great. Yes, I love it.
Yes. All right. This was so, so fun. I can't wait to have you on again. You're going to be hearing
Oh,
lots of Amber in these episodes.
thanks,
And
Megan.
the next one, just so everyone knows, we're going to be talking about the vouchers. And
Hmm.
we have another guest expert coming who's very equipped in that. So she'll be on with Amber and I. And of course, we'll do our case studies of from the behavioral lens with some things. And then that guest expert piece, we'll be talking about the vouchers and other funding things that homeschoolers have access to and things to be aware of, because I think we want to be aware of some things also. Do you have
Yes.
anything you want, a teaser, do you want to share on that at all?
Yeah, well, like I told you, this is something, it's a huge topic of discussion in our state, therefore community, and also in our smaller communities here. It's something that comes up every single day in homeschooling groups and in our community that meets up. And so there's a lot of vulnerability, there's a lot of curiosity, and there's a lot of components that aren't very clear, at least in our state.
Mhm.
And so I've gathered up a lot of research, talked to a lot of people, and I'm excited to share that, but I'm very excited to hear back from our guests next time too.
Cool. All right. So if you're interested in that, join us the last Wednesday of the month. And then last thing I'll share is I'm also offering a parenting coaching call for nature-based school parents. So that's a little teaser, because I think parents have been the missing component for a while. And I love that you've shifted your program into being cooperative, because parents need community, even if
Mhm.
they're forced to be there sometimes. It's
Yep.
so easy to just drop off and go.
Mhm.
And once they, I don't even think they know how much they need community. So I think so, so important.
Mhm.
But I think, I work with schools and their teachers with behavior, but helping parents understand behavior is that circle of care component that is missing. And so super excited to be offering that. Okay. With that, we will let you go. Thank you so much, Amber, for being here. And we'll see you next time, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Megan.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. Bye.